Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Chinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvasesis Nirvani Paskachade Satarane Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Padijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Ivishakam Vitamscha Panchakalpajubhischa Kripasindabe Bhutapatitanam Pamanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So thank you very, very much for coming. Actually, what's your name, Prabhu? Hem Roop. The golden form. And see, he's also glowing. It's funny when you said this is like a thesis, so it made me think about, for my own doctoral thesis, was my PhD's in education, but the focus is on educational leadership. And for my own doctoral thesis, I surveyed nearly 400 people around the world in terms of job satisfaction. So I've done quite a lot of work in what involves having satisfaction in your career. And my co-author is Dr. Ruchira Datta. She's also called Rukmini Devi Dasi, but it's not the Rukmini you're thinking about. She introduces herself as the fake Rukmini. So she's not my god sister Rukmini, originally Bengali. And her great-grandparents were disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. In our book at the end, we were asked by one of our test readers to include some biographical information about ourselves, and we actually included much more than is usually included in books. So we really explained why we had any business writing about career and why we had any business writing about Dharma. So if you want to read more in that regard, we have that in the back of the book. My PhD, as I said, is in education. Hers is in mathematics. She's also a research scientist. She's done a lot of work in cancer research, for example. So I first of all want to know, is my English speed okay? Is it okay for you? Because you're looking at me like this, and I'm wondering if you're having to really focus. Should I speak more slowly? That's okay. Were we going to have translation? And what's the status of that? No translation. That didn't happen. Okay. So everybody is okay with English? Yes? All right. So I always make a deal when I'm speaking to people who have English as their second, third, fourth, or fifth language, that if there's anything I say that you don't understand, or if I say something that you're sure you understand, but you think it's crazy, you're like, why did she say that? Or if I'm speaking too fast. I was born and raised in New York City. I was so happy when I was just in Mumbai at Bhaktivedanta Hospital, and I was introduced as, she's from New York, so she understands Mumbai. Well, it's the first time I had an introduction like that, and I was like, wow, somebody gets me, you know, big city girl. But we do tend to speak very fast in the big cities of the world, yes, whatever our native language is. And especially if I get excited about something, I can talk very fast. So if I speak too quickly, or if I say something you don't understand, do we have a deal that you will stop and ask me? Yeah? Is that a deal? Okay. I had an experience at the beginning of this year when I taught this course. Actually, it was only the second time that I taught it. And the person it was to a Russian-speaking audience, and the person who introduced me said, Urmila said something years ago that really affected me, and he said what I said, but I didn't say that. And I thought, oops, translation problem. So again, anyway, he was inspired by it, so I guess that's okay. But if you can let me know. So this will not be just simply me entertaining you, although hopefully it will be somewhat entertaining, but it will be very much a workshop, a fun shop, and we will have questions and interaction and introspection. I hope that you're all prepared to take some notes. By having 2 hours for each session, we really do allow for quite a bit of churning and understanding to go on. So I have taught these in just like 45-minute sessions, but then we never have really time for interaction and discussion. So I'm going to be giving 4 in-depth sessions, and these are really just on 4 chapters of the book that I'm going to in-depth. And the reason that I choose these is that these are of the greatest interest to most people. The first 3 particularly concentrate on who am I and what is my nature. And the 4th one, although it really is looking at more of a societal lens, makes even more clear what is our nature. In the 5th one, I'm going to summarize the entire book. So, which means I'll be summarizing what we've gone over in the first 4 sessions, but I will also, in addition, be covering a lot of material that we have not covered in the first 4 sessions. So it'll be a summary of what we've done and a lot of new material in a very short overview format. Okay? Is that all right with everybody? And if you're interested, we are in more information. We are coming out with an ebook. It's been one of these just now coming things for months. We have a technical team working on it, and I keep getting, I think we've got all the bugs out. Oops. Kind of situation. We are also working on an audiobook. So we have a person doing that. And I am working with a team from Bhaktivedanta College in Radhadesh on a comprehensive online course. I've already recorded the videos for that. We're deciding on the platform and interactive materials and things of that nature. That may take sometime 6 months to a year. Eventually, what I'd like to do, and this is very strange for me, because I don't like games, but eventually we hope that the online course will be in the form of a game. It will be a gamified course. So that was quite a shift for me to think about that. But I was really thinking about how are we going to get on an online, because like everybody else who does what I do, I was functioning on Zoom the last few years. And I thought, how could we do something online where people really get to interact with the material? So if you want any more information about when these things become available, please sign up. You will not get an email confirmation. We have received your email. We're not that sophisticated, but we will get your information. If you want to just capture the QR code for that, you can do that too. Are your working life and your spiritual practice is out of balance, whether you know what your ideal career is or you're not yet sure? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be learning and beginning to implement the 9 principles of the career Dharma system so that you will be well on your way to achieving deeply satisfying career success and harmonious balance between your career and spiritual life. You will identify your ideal career field and prosperity type, progress toward Dharmic mastery, and learn the secrets of making your work deeply meaningful. You will start applying the principles of devotional living to your career, and your career will thus enthuse your spiritual practices with deep meaning and taste. So this is what we're aiming for. This is our learning objective for those of you who are teachers. So these are the big questions I've gotten in the decades in which I've been teaching audiences all over the world. How do I balance my material and spiritual life? How do I have my career enthuse me in spiritual life? How do I find out what is my nature? And perhaps some of you are here because you want to help other people do that. And a number of people who've taken this course and read the book have become very enthused in that regard. And Rukmini and I are working with some of them personally. I should also mention that after you go through this, these sessions, if we have time and you want to have a one-on-one consultation with me, if we can work that out schedule-wise, I'm happy to do that. Many people they just get it from this or get it from this in the book and they just, okay, I got it. And for other people, it may take 5-10 minutes, and for a few people, it takes an hour or two to have clarity. All right. So imagine that your daily life has come to include all the practices that you've always dreamed of. You love the work you're doing, what you're producing, how you're making a meaningful contribution, and your work is giving you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. And now imagine that the whole world was like that. That's Srila Prabhupada's dream. So we're going to look at 4 main areas: identifying our ideal career, field, and prosperity type, which is what most people are interested in. But that's not the all in all. It's not enough. We're going to be on that to learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, from there to progress to Dharmic mastery, and from there to look at the whole system for peace and prosperity, which is a phrase Srila Prabhupada used 195 times. So these 4 areas are going to encompass these 9 principles. If we can read them together, that would be nice. Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields, all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. So in the first 4 in-depth classes, we're going to be doing some of 1, 2, and 4. And then we'll look at all 9 in the last class. All right, so Krishna says, and we'll look at this verse again, that we cannot repress our nature, that everyone is going to act according to their nature, and that everyone can become perfect by following their own work. Okay, so here we're looking at identifying our prosperity type and career field, and principle 1, connecting our nature with our livelihood. So, I think a lot of people, if not most people, choose their career based on how much money they expect to earn from their work. Okay, well, that's reasonable, but it's not reasonable. Because does money, in and of itself, equal a satisfying rich life? Right, so I've asked thousands of people this question. Have you ever heard of anybody, read about anybody, met anybody that had a whole lot of money, but an unsatisfying life? Any of you? How many people here have heard about, read about, met even one person? Some of you have never read a news headline. I mean, you read about these guys that have, millions of dollars, and they've been through 3 marriages, and they're addicted to drugs, and right? That's how the primary example in our Shastra of this is Hiranyakashipu. He had a lot of money. And he was miserable. The Shastra tells us that he was always intoxicated. Happy people do not take intoxication. They don't need to. They're already happy. And he was yelling at the demigods for no reason. Do we yell at people for no reason when we're happy? No. You ever know people like that? They go around yelling at others for no reason? We all met people like this? And you know they're not happy. Hmm? And have you ever met anyone or heard of anyone or know of anyone who doesn't have a lot of money, but who's got a happy, rich life? So, there's not this one-to-one equivalency between money and prosperity in life. Definitely, making money is important. Everyone has to have some money. Even people who, simple living people have to have some money, yes? Any of our farm projects where they're really into simple living, they also have to have some money. In America, the Amish farm communities, they also have to make some money. The Christian monks who live at the top of a mountain, everybody has to make some money. One of the sources we quote in our book is from a book called Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. So, without denying the importance of that, we'd like to look at other ways where we can measure our prosperity that are equal, if not more important. All right, so I'd like you to write a list of things that make you feel rich and prosperous. What makes you feel rich and prosperous? And please don't list the names of specific people or specific animals. But please make a list. What makes you feel rich and prosperous? What brings you great joy in your life? If you don't have paper, you can write on a phone. And Priya Chaitanya, we might want to have something to write on and something to write with for the people that have only one or neither. Is there someone who does? Some people clearly do not. Okay, now I'd like you to take one of those and expand on it a little bit. For example, something that really makes me feel joyful and is that I'm really having a rich life is artwork. So in most of my books, I commission artwork. I think, do we have some Krishna meditation books here too? Only career Dharma, oh, okay. Do we have any left, Krishna meditations, or we sold all of them? We have some, okay. So in most of my books, I engage artists and I commission artwork. I like to support artists and encourage artists. I don't have any original art in anywhere that I live. Mostly because I don't really live places. But I have beautiful high-quality prints that I have framed on my walls. I like to put together these PowerPoint presentations with beautiful pictures. I'm also very interested in fabric art. I work with a lot of devotees who are involved with reviving or maintaining a lot of the original ways of weaving and printing and dyeing and things like that. So that's a little bit of an expansion. I could just say, really beautiful art I could have on my list, but then I could explain I like it on my walls, I like to put it in books, I like to put it in presentations. I work with people who are very involved with artists. So take one of the things on your list and you could write 2 or 3 sentences to expand on it. So the Shastra tells us that there's 6 types of prosperity. And these are a much better way of ascertaining whether or not we're in a career that is satisfying to us than just looking simply at money. So as we go through each of these, we're going to discuss them and we're going to think about when we've had them, especially when we've had them as part of our livelihood, when we haven't, how we felt when we've had them, and how we feel when we don't have them. So the first one is Aishvarya. This comes from what Sanskrit word? Aishvarya comes from the Sanskrit word Ishvara. It means controller. So having Aishvarya can refer to having money and luxury, but it also refers to being in a position of leadership. Now, by this we mean positional leadership, where you have people who work under you and who you engage in work. So you're organizing them, you're engaging them. You're engaging them according to their talents, their abilities. Maybe you're supervising teams. I spoke to a devotee recently who's a project manager, and what he manages is he goes into businesses and that are just building new buildings or renovating buildings, and he organizes teams for the plumbing, the electric, the artwork, everything, the interior design, and he's got a team for each of those, and then he manages those teams. One devotee I spoke to in Europe, she's in a healthcare business with like essential oils and soaps and things like that. And she said, I used to be in marketing and sales, but what I really like doing is engaging other people and helping other people be successful. I said, how many people are you managing now? And she said, 50,000, which really just kind of blew me away. And there's another devotee I spoke to in Europe who went through this course, and he was telling me that same thing. He said, I really don't like the marketing and the sales kind of business. What I like to do is oversee it. I manage it and organize the people, right? I had someone recently tell me, I really didn't like teaching, but what I like to do is organize educational events. And I like to organize the teachers, I like to organize what's going on and bring people together. This is all Aishvarya. Now, I should tell you that I really struggled myself with accepting that this is something that makes me feel rich and makes me feel fulfilled. I think when we try to be spiritual people, we think that we're supposed to just be kind of humble in the back. And that if we take any sort of leadership role, that it must be mixed with some sort of nasty ego. Which is interesting because we all need and want leaders. Yes? So several years ago, actually I'm going to tell you a whole story here. So for years I was battling with my tendency to lead. For years. And I was often saying to Krishna, Krishna, why can't I just be a little quiet mouse in the back of the room? So I was in Bhaktivedanta Hospital in 2005, getting some Ayurvedic treatment, and I was going every morning to the Mira Road Temple for the morning program, which was a very small building at the time. And I was there in the summer, so I was there for Lord Balaram's appearance day. Now, every time I would talk to Krishna like this, I'd say, why can't I just make garlands? Why do I have to why do I keep being in this position? Why don't I just be a simple devotee? Like in the Chaupati temple, I noticed that during the Bhagavatam class, there's a whole room of garland makers off to the side, who I'm sure don't hear much of the class, but anyway. So I was thinking, why can't I just be making garlands? That was this like running dissatisfaction with myself going on. Okay, so I go to the Mira Road Temple for Balaram's appearance day, and there's a table with 3 or 4 women making garlands, and I get all excited, and I think, okay, I'm going to go make garlands. So none of them spoke any English, and I went up to them, and I asked if I could make garlands, and they just kind of looked at me like, they didn't give me a very nice look. And then the temple president's wife comes over, and I know enough Hindi to understand that what she was saying was that I was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and they had to let me make garlands whether they wanted to or not. And that made me even more uncomfortable. So then I was kind of stuck. All right, so I sat down, and I've always made garlands with a needle, but they had a tying technique which I wasn't familiar with, and so I'm watching them, knowing that they really did not want me to be there, and I'm watching how they're doing it, and so then finally they very reluctantly gave me some flowers, and I'm tying them, and I'm making this garland. And meanwhile, they're grumbling in Hindi. Anglesi, useless white lady, what is she doing here, you know? So anyway, I finally finished my garland, and I put it down, and I left, and I'm like, whew. And as soon as I got just a couple meters away, they tore it all out. And I thought, okay, Krishna, all right, I hear you. But even then, I don't think it really penetrated. I sort of accepted then, okay, I'm not supposed to be in that side room making garlands. I'm supposed to be sitting on the Vyasasana. I sort of accepted that. But it was a few years later that one devotee was getting his master's in psychology, and he was giving people personality tests. And he asked us to participate to help him in his research. So we all said yes. So, I filled out the thing, and then he's meeting with each of us. And he met with me, and he said, according to this, you cannot not lead. You follow? That's a little hard in English. You cannot not lead. And I thought, I've been trying to not lead my whole life, and he's saying, you will fail. And I thought, yeah, I've been failing my whole life to not lead. And then I was like, okay, done fighting this. So that was quite a real transformation for me, and a real, as my daughter likes to say, a real journey for me to come to accept myself for who I am. And I'm sure part of that struggle had to do with joining the Hare Krishna movement when I was 18 years old. But I think still it was really a difficult thing. And leadership is definitely sometimes uncomfortable. There's no doubt about it. But it's also just a part of my nature, and I love it when I can bring together people and teams and engage them and see them work together. And for example, how many years has it been? 8 now? Years that I've been the chairperson of the Shastric Advisory Council, which means that I'm bringing together 18 scholars to write papers. Perhaps some of you have seen our latest one on the Brahma Gayatri. So this is very difficult. If you've seen papers in academia, they may have 2 authors, maybe 3, maybe 4, not usually 18. And if any of you have ever worked with scholars in the United States, we call trying to get scholars to cooperate herding cats. Cats are not herd animals. And if you try to get them to behave like that, but I really relish that challenge of getting people to work together and mediating differences and things of this nature. Now, I also know people who strongly dislike having this sort of a role. Like really, really strongly dislike. Actually, my oldest son is in that category. He does not ever want to put himself forward like that. So there's many, many people who only want to work as part of a team, or they want to work on their own, and they don't want responsibility for managing others. In fact, I just met a devotee like this in Pune, who was running an educational program, and she said to me, I love teaching, I hate managing. She said, it makes me cry, lose sleep, I'm just in agony, drives me out of my mind, I have so much tension, I have so much anxiety. And I met a devotee like this in Switzerland also. He says, I'm very competent as a leader, but I hate it. And he said, I've been pushed by devotees to take a leadership role, and so I've been doing it, but I've had a constant backache. And I said, So I'd like you to think about when you've had this, especially as part of your work, or when you haven't had it. How do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, the next one we're going to look at is Gyan. So Gyan is basically knowledge and wisdom. And there's a lot of careers, there's a lot of work where you need to keep learning in order to function in that career. So I remember many years ago talking to one of the eye doctors in Bhaktivedanta Hospital who was telling me that she has to read at least 3 new articles every week in her discipline in order to keep current in her work. So there are jobs where it absolutely is required. You have to keep learning, you have to keep studying, you have to keep enlarging what you know in order to function in the job. And there are many of us who really like that. We want to keep learning about things. We want to keep learning more about what we're doing. No matter how many years of education we had to prepare ourselves for that job or whatever, we always want to learn more about our work. Some of us are just insatiably curious people. And if we don't have a job where we can engage that curiosity, we get very bored. Right? One of the things I know for one devotee who said he was very frustrated at his work is if he finished his work early and he wanted to do some more study about his work, they considered that not work-related. You know, you can't read on your work time. He said, but I finished all of my work and the book I'm reading relates to the work I'm doing. Sorry, you have to do that at home. Right? And he didn't stay in the job very long. It was very frustrating to him. So not only work that insists and demands that we keep learning, but where learning is part of the work. It's not like you're working hard for 8 hours and then you have to go home and study separately about your work. But that's included in the work. Then there are other people who really don't like this at all. They find it a burden. Like, why do I have to keep taking more courses and more classes on this? I already know how to do it. I remember meeting one teacher like this. Right? I was being brought into a school to give in-service training, and the teacher said to me, I hate these in-service times. So I've been teaching for 25 years, I already know my stuff, I don't need anybody else to tell me anything else. There are a lot of people who really, they want to know what they need to know to do their work, and they don't want to have to, like, all right already. That's enough. I don't want to have to take another course. I don't want to have to read another book. I don't want to have to do any research on this. I know how to do it, and that's enough. That it becomes a burden for them. So again, I'd like you to think about, when have you had this as part of your work? Or when have you not had it? How do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? All right. Did you have a question specifically about Gyan? Yes, okay, go ahead.
Right. In this, when you're talking about trying to get our knowledge and you want to know more about your knowledge about people who are, when you tend to try to get more and more knowledge, you realize that your attention goes most of the time your attention goes to, learn your knowledge, because that is what your profession is. Some of this with me, I tend to neglect my, reading spiritual books. So I really want to know how to balance that.
Well, if you're gaining knowledge about your work is part of your work time,
Yes.
you wouldn't have that problem, would you?
Well, I'm not working, I'm not working for anything. It's just that I'm doing my psychology. So when I learned, because I'm a therapist, so when I'm learning, trying to gain more knowledge.
But let's say if you're working as a therapist 6 hours a day, And part of that 6 hours you can dedicate to learning more about therapy. It doesn't have to be extra. I believe the problem comes up when I have my work for 6 hours or 8 hours a day, and during that time I have no time to learn about my work. It's not included. And then I have to be learning about my work in the evening and on the weekends when I want to be reading Bhagavad Gita. Am I correct? All right. So if I'm correct, then this would mean I want work where time to learn about my work is included in my work time. Oh, I like that. I didn't even plan to say it like that. It was great. Thank you.
Okay.
When time to learn about my work is included in my work time, and people are not expecting me to pull from my private time.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. Anything else that somebody wanted to bring up about Gyan or Aishvarya before we go on? Yeah.
Sometimes when we doing research or trying to get the knowledge of our field, this happens with me that whenever we look at the things, we look the things as in the same perspective that I want to gain the knowledge. You are getting what I'm trying to say, that even in our personal life also we are focused or we are too much into that sometimes we are too much in gaining the knowledge. So how to is it our nature because of that everywhere we are looking for the knowledge, or we are doing too much?
I think you're talking a lot about what I talked about with leadership, where, and if there's one thing that I hope you get out of the sessions and the book, is that every nature is glorious and beautiful if it's done in the right way and in the right place. Yeah. I mean, I got in a lot of trouble in school for wanting to know too much. Isn't that strange? Could never figure out why the teachers didn't like that I was thirstier for knowledge than was in their syllabus. Yes?
Because we like something, it's not like that it's 6 hours working and it's inclination. There are so many case studies developed that the scientists, and they are involved in some research, if they haven't time to eat 15 hours, 16 hours, they are just sitting in the room and focus was there.
So you're talking about people who love their work so much that their life gets out of balance because they forget to eat and sleep.
Because they have given so much to the society. That's the point.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. We'll probably talk about that the most in the last session when we talk about cherishing our prosperity type and field of work. But one of the hallmarks of doing work that's your nature is that the line between work and play disappears. Your work becomes like play. And when your work becomes like play, then you act as if you're playing. And when people are playing, they're not interested in eating and sleeping. Even Krishna gets like that. Krishna's out playing with his friends, and Mother Rohini comes and says, "Come home." And they ignore her, and Mother Yasoda comes and says, "Come home." And they ignore her. And then Mother Yasoda says, "You have to come home. Are you a street boy?" And so Krishna starts coming home, and the other boys say, "If you go, we won't play with you tomorrow." And then Mother Yasoda says, "But Nanda Maharaj will not eat." So then Krishna has to go. So even God, when he's involved in play, doesn't want to eat. So we tend to be the same way. When we're playing, we forget about eating and sleeping. And if the career that we have becomes like play to us, which it should, then we may run into the same problem. But therefore we have the other principles of career Dharma, and one of them, which we won't discuss until Monday, is cherishing our prosperity type and our field of work. And part of our prosperity is our own mental and physical health. So if you don't take care of if your job is so engaging that you don't eat and sleep, then you're not cherishing the very thing that's giving you prosperity. So then you're violating one of the other principles of career Dharma. But that should be the tendency. The tendency should be that our work is like play. That we're so absorbed, not because we're driven, out of rajas, but because we're above the gunas and we're just playful. But thank you. All right, I want to go on to virya. So virya is health and strength. So a lot of people have careers where gaining in health and strength is an integral part of their career. So one of the devotees I met in Germany, I was meeting with one couple, and he works in construction. And he was saying that one of the things he loves about his work is how physical it is, and how much he's getting a physical workout. And if there's times that he can't work, that he gets very physically, he has all this physical energy he doesn't know what to do with. He wants to do that. Or one devotee I met in Belgium who started to work with the cows. And she says she loves working with the cows because of the physicality involved. She said, I have to walk from my home to the goshal, and then, brushing the cows and milking the cows and walking home. I'm getting a lot of exercise as part of my work. So our daughter is a Bharatanatyam dance teacher. She runs her own school. And so every time she teaches dance, she gets her own physical workout. Right? She says, I don't need any other kind of exercise. One may also have a career that adds to one's health in other ways besides physical exercise. One may be working in a very healthy environment. One may be working outside. I was very pleased when I looked at the weather forecast for here. It said there was excellent air quality. Something I don't usually encounter in India. So I was just like, wow, that's really nice. If you get to work in some place that's a very healthy environment, or if somehow your work involves things that make you healthier. Now, of course, many people who work in the health industry don't have jobs that help them become healthy. Like most modern doctors work very long hours, right? They often don't see the sun, right? And you go to the snack room for the doctors and nurses, and it's full of, bags of candy and, yes? So, although, we okay here? Although they're in a health field and they're helping other people become healthy, their work is actually making them unhealthy. You're translating there in the back, yes? You're translating? Okay. If you need me to repeat anything or go more slowly, you will tell me, correct? Okay. What are you translating into? Hindi, okay. So some people really want this as part of their work. They want work where the work itself is contributing to their health. And other people will find this annoying. There are a lot of us who don't want to have physical work as part of our job, that, we'll take care of our health separately, thank you very much. We'll do our own exercise, and it's just irrelevant to our work and even irritating to have it part of our work. Certainly my work doesn't involve any of this at all. And anything I do for my health, I have to do separately. And I very much like that. I know. Occasionally I have to carry my heavy bags to an airport, but that's... and up the stairs to the airplane, that's always... Oh, God, there's stairs. There's more stairs in my bag. So I'd like you to think of when you've had this as part of your work, when you haven't had it as part of your work. How do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, I'd like to go on to Shri. If anybody has anyone have any questions about Virya or any comments about Virya? Yes.
What Virya
also typically is understood from Sanskrit as bravery. Veer means someone who is brave.
Yes, it can be that also.
So does this prosperity type has something to do with opportunity to
Be heroic.
to be heroic?
It could. It definitely could. I mean, that we'll be discussing more tomorrow in the fields of work, but it certainly could. So opportunities to be heroic and brave. Yes, it definitely could. Not necessarily, but yes. Yes.
Are these six prosperities parallel to six opulences of the Lord? Like, what is the source of these six prosperities?
Yes. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu. Okay, we're going to need the mic for you for sure. The AC is loud, so it just, yeah.
So when we are engaged in activities which are physically demanding, in beginning it excites us, but later on we feel like what we are doing, and after 1 hour, 2 hours of work, we feel little lethargic and just want
So
to.
this is not yours.
The quality of work.
Then this is not yours. That's not yours. Was that clear to everybody? Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you said something. Yeah. It's not mine either. It's fine.
Why it is initially exciting, like sometimes?
Well, anything can be initially exciting, but if it's not something you want to sustain and it's not something you want to have as a regular part of your work for 8 or 10 hours a day, then it's not a prosperity type that's something that should be part of your career. Does that make sense? There are all kinds of things that we like or we enjoy briefly and temporarily. I mean, I like taking a vigorous walk for half an hour. I do. I try to do that every day. But if my work involved vigorous physical activity all day, I really wouldn't like it. I'd say, can you please give me another kind of work? Whereas there's other people who, if they don't have that, they want another kind of work. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yes.
again, not enough to do. But we are just thinking that, especially, like now when Prabhu asked the question, when he gets tired, that's not work.
So my question is that, some profession we are there because it fetches you money, the way you said. Like I'm thinking of the teachers, If my heart is not into teaching, being with the children, and I'm not too excited to learn, to be good, teach the perfect thing for the kids, am I doing harm to myself,
Oh, we will get there.
Oh,
You are not only hurting yourself, you're hurting all of society. Ooh. But let's not talk about that this
yeah,
class.
thank you.
Right? I have a very, very specific reason as a teacher that I start with this class. So, right. The answer is yes. But we will get there. Okay. Okay, let's go on to Shri. And I think this is also relevant to your question about Virya, that Shri is like many of these, they're complex. And one of the main reasons that Rukmini and I decided to use the Sanskrit words for these, because Prabhupada will often give a one-word translation, is that they're all complex. And there can be many aspects of them. So Shri is really anything to do with splendidness, sparkliness. No, not fame, but charismatic leadership, which is different from Aishvarya, that is positional leadership. In Aishvarya, you probably have a title, you know, project leader, vice president, chairperson. You probably have a title and you have very specific job responsibilities that involve engaging and managing other people. I mean, I really don't want to distinguish it as admin and leadership because I think that's a very false dichotomy here. But in Aishvarya, it's much more positional leadership, and in Shri, we're talking about charismatic leadership. You may not actually be engaging anybody, but people are still following you. Can you understand what that distinction might be? No? Like you, if you're getting up on a stage and you're inspiring people, but you're not managing any teams. You're only managing yourself. Does that make some sense? Yeah. Motivational speaker, or what? I'm never quite sure what influencers do. I really, whenever I hear this person is an influencer, I'm thinking, what does that mean exactly? But I think, I'm showing my age here, but I think an influencer has some kind of charismatic leadership, but isn't actually managing anybody. I think so. Am I right? Okay. So Shri is charismatic leadership, but also any other kind of beauty. So it can be natural beauty. You have a job that has you working out in nature. It can be visual beauty. You're creating visual beauty that you're also enjoying. It can be auditory beauty. Maybe your job makes you more beautiful. You know, you're a fashion model, and so your job is making you more beautiful. You're a musician, or you're in some environment where you're constantly surrounded by beautiful music. It's part of your job. You may not be creating the music, but you may be in a very musically beautiful environment. Now we do talk in the book about what prosperity types our jobs create for others. Now, you might be creating Shri for others, like we talked about with Virya, and it's not giving any Shri to yourself. If you think about the people in the big garbage collection trucks, they're making the streets more beautiful for other people, but they become dirty by doing that work. They don't personally become beautiful. So any work that's bringing beauty into your life. Now, as I mentioned, that my daughter's a Bharatanatyam dance teacher, and that certainly fills her life with beauty on many, many, many levels. There's the beauty of the music. She's picking out music. Sometimes she has live orchestras, live singers, the costumes, the jewelry, the dancing itself. A lot of the work she does is also arranging videos of their dance performances, and she likes to edit the videos. So all of these things bring beauty into her life. Auditory beauty, visual beauty including dance and gracefulness beauty. She also has quite a bit, she also has some Aishvarya, but she also has quite a bit of charismatic leadership as well. Now, my work does not naturally give me Shri. I could easily be a researcher and a scholar and a writer and a teacher and have nothing to do with Shri, other than perhaps in terms of charismatic leadership. But as I said, something that really makes me feel prosperous is visual beauty. And that's one of the reasons that I make all these PowerPoints. Now, I started making them actually when I went to a presentation by Ramapad Swami, where he had, it wasn't that great of a PowerPoint, it was a pretty simplistic level. And he was struggling, as sometimes happens, for 10 or 15 minutes to get the tech to work. That happened to me yesterday at the hospital. It was a 15, 20-minute struggle to get the tech to work. And while they were doing that struggle, he was speaking about the benefit of having visual aids when you're a teacher. And I was sitting in the audience thinking, well, I'm a teacher and I know this. Why aren't I using more visual aids in my teaching? It vastly increases people's understanding and retention. And what I found was that I really like developing these. I mean, sometimes finding the pictures for one slide can take me an hour. But I really like that. I really like finding good quality pictures. I really like putting them together in beautiful designs. As I said, I really like engaging artists and having illustrated books that I produce. So I've added that to my work myself, and I can do that because I have a lot of control over the kind of work that I do. I remember one godbrother saying to me, Urmila, you really did a good job with Raghunath Das Goswami's Manashiksha, but why do you have so many illustrations? The book would have been better without the illustrations. And I was like, no. I also have a number of presentations with music in them. One of my frustrations with the Zoom phenomena is that if you're teaching a class over Zoom with a PowerPoint that has music, you can click this thing that, get the sound from my computer, but it's extremely difficult to have music and speak over Zoom and have people hear both. And so pretty much anything that I developed over the pandemic doesn't have music in it. And it was so interesting, being back alive with live people again. Such a strange thing, to be alive again with live audiences and being able to show some of my presentations and have music, and how much people appreciate them and how immersive they are. And so I was like, wow, I really like, people still ask me, would you do something on Zoom? And I'm like, yeah, I'm on the road now, I'm too busy. Anyway, so I've brought, because Shri is very important to me, I've brought this into my work because I can. I have that ability to do that. And one of the things that I've noticed, much to my bewilderment, because Atmaman Madhite Jagat, is people who don't care about this at all. Of all of the opulences, this one bewilders me the most. Like, you don't care if it's beautiful or not? But there are many, many people like this. It just doesn't matter to them at all. In fact, they find it annoying if they have to make things beautiful. They're like, why do I have to make it? Why? It works. It's practical. Like, I'm getting the job done. Like, why do I have to put bells and whistles on it? This is just frivolous. This is just stupid. What a waste of my time and everyone else's time. Right? I remember once asking one devotee speaker, do you think you could organize this into a handout? And he's like, why? So there are a lot of people who really don't like Shri. They may not like the leadership aspect of Shri, but they may not even be very interested in the auditory or the visual or even the nature part of Shri. It just doesn't interest them, and they may find it, in fact, unnecessary irritant. Okay, so I'd like you to think about when you've had this, especially as part of your work, when you don't have it, how do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, any discussion on Shri? Yes, Prabhu. Yes. Correct.
So does this mean that is their prosperity type, or it's not their prosperity type?
It's not what they need to enjoy. If they're doing work that they love, if they love the work, They may find happiness in giving Shri to others, but they don't have a desire to enjoy it for themselves.
Okay, so it is part of their prosperity type?
No.
It's not.
No.
So, for example, if someone who has an OCD, like an obsessive compulsive disorder of
Let's
keeping
talk.
things
Let's talk about people who are not
okay.
having something in the
Okay.
diagnosed mental illness.
Mataji, here also the same kind of issue that it Shri connotes quite different things. The way we saw in Virya, on one hand it's physicality or health related aspects of the work, health enhancing aspects of the work, and as I had raised the thought that it would also mean
Bravery.
bravery. Similarly here, it is on one hand charisma, which is very social in nature, and
Correct. And the others might be
other hand
solitary.
is artistic, which is very solitary.
Might be.
So,
Might
so,
be.
so very dissimilar things are being actually clubbed into these kind of
What the point
prosperity
you're
types.
making also applies to some extent for the four fields, which we'll be discussing tomorrow. They're broad and complex. But still, these delineations are there. So a person may really want one aspect of Virya in their work and not the others, or one aspect of Shri and not the others. And it's not that if you want one aspect, you want all of them. Is that okay? You may want work that involves a lot of physicality but not bravery, or you may want work that involves bravery and physicality. You may want work that involves a lot of auditory beauty but not charismatic leadership. So it's not a package, and because it's not a package, therefore, Rukmini and I did not use one English word as a translation for these. That was our reason. So when I'm asking how you feel when you have it and when you don't have it, I'm asking for any part of this. You may not be interested in all parts of it. You may not be interested in any part of it as part of your work. Or you may be partially, well, I really want this part of it as part, but not that part. And understanding this helps us to have some identification of very specific career choices. So, thank you for bringing this up. Yes, this is important. Somebody else? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So, like, if we like some aspect of this, but we personally not able to do it, like we may like some music, something, but we may not personally do it, or some artistic things.
Well, we're talking about whether you like. I don't produce art per se. I mean, I did have some training in art when I was younger. My middle sister was an artist. And I don't produce art per se, and nor am I that interested in doing it. So it's not necessarily that you'd have to be a painter or a musician or a gardener.
Having it is like pleasing, is it?
Yeah, and having it as part of your work.
Okay.
Where your work is bringing this sense of prosperity into your life. I mean, this particular prosperity type, if I don't have this as part of my work, I feel that I'm suffocating. What you'll see as you go through the prosperity types, that some of them you're like, if I don't have this, I just feel impoverished. And others are, well, there's parts of it I can have or not, and there's others like, I really don't like this. It's on a continuum, and it's a particular personal mixture for us. Is that okay? There was a question over here. Yeah.
So as part of, I'm actually very blank, while answering whether, how will I feel if I have it or how will I feel if I don't have it. Because as part of my work,
You've never had that experience.
I've never had that experience.
Then you can ask, how do you feel if you have it or don't have it in your life in general?
Yeah, so taking cues from my personal life, like, I like to wear good clothes, I like to look good, and, beautiful things admire me. So from that perspective, how can I inculcate in my...
Exactly, that is the next step. And by the way, there are people who aren't like that. It's not that everybody is like that. Some people, they don't really care what they look like. I mean, they really just genuinely don't. And they don't, they're happy with to be how they dress, how they look, what's in their environment. They're only looking at functionality, and they're not looking at beauty. I mean, should I say this or not? I don't know. But I've been in the homes of some very, very wealthy people where the home itself is beautiful, but the people have no concept of beauty at all. There's absolutely none. And this one picture comes to mind. It was this gorgeous house, like made out of marble, it was just beautiful. And they had a picture of Radha Madhava from Mayapur Dham, a huge, taller than me. And the picture had been stretched. Have you ever seen those? So Madhava's face was like, oh. And it was just a poster without a frame, with the edges frayed. And I'm looking at this and how can you bear it? It was hard. I was just a guest there for a few days, and every time I walked past, I was going, ew. It's really taken me a while to understand. Hey, Urmila, there's things that you don't like and that don't matter to you, and some things that you like don't matter to other people. It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that one, because this is so important to me. I mean, how to integrate this, like I've talked about how I integrate it into my work. And one of the challenges for me as a traveling preacher is that some places I stay in are like GV, where there's Shri everywhere. Inside where I'm staying, outside where I'm staying, everything is beautiful. But that's not always the case. I stay in places where the view out of the window is somebody's underwear laundry hanging, And the place hasn't been thoroughly, really repaired and cleaned for the last 30 years, and you're just like, yeah. And what I do then, because I travel with Giriraj and Shalagram, you saw, yeah. So I make a nice, they're very small, so I can make a very nice place for them, and I make that beautiful, and then I forget about everything else, and just, that's my home. It's like that's where I live, right there with them. So I found different mental tricks to try to bring that into my life, even if it's not naturally in my life. But, if you think about if you've never had it in your work, think about what is it like when I have it in my life? What is it like when I not have it in my life? Was there one other question here?
Mataji, like if we are sitting in a group of 5 and discussing over something, and we come on discussing over something, and someone says that, okay, this person has to take the charge eventually. So does it count in charismatic leadership?
When you're in charge and you actually have positional responsibility, what is that? That's Aishwarya.
But that is not, we are not taking a charge, but eventually someone says okay, you go and do it.
Well, then they're telling you what to do. But if you're telling other people what to do, that sounds terrible. But if you're managing people, you're directing people, you're coordinating people on that's Aishwarya, not Shri.
In a group, so the people in a group found that you have that capability and that traits of leadership. That's why they are giving that role to her.
Maybe.
So maybe that charismatic traits are there. That's why it's not a positional, because when positional leadership we talk, it's already given by the organizations or the any sort of community. It's given, but that is in her case, which I thought.
Maybe. The problem is
the point?
The
right?
problem is that charismatic leadership and positional leadership are not always the same. Some people who take positional leadership don't want to have charismatic leadership. They want to organize and manage, but they really don't want to get up on stage, and that's not their thing. And some of the people who want to get up on stage and inspire really don't want to organize and manage people. They're not the same thing. So if someone notices you have charismatic leadership and pushes you into positional leadership, that may be a mistake. It depends whether both of those are your tastes. Also, something we will get into a lot more tomorrow and Monday is that just because you can do something very well doesn't mean you should do it. Which relates to her question about what happens when you do something that's not your nature. And we'll talk about this a lot more tomorrow and Monday. There's 3 parts to work: knowing the information about the work, having the skills or craft of the work, and having the values or Dharma of the work. And what we're focusing on here is the Dharma. Okay? A lot of times when people look at career, they just look at information and skills. You can learn a lot about someone else's work, and you can be expert in the skills or the craft of someone else's work. But that doesn't mean it's your Dharma. And again, we'll talk about that much more tomorrow and Monday. So I do not want to talk about it more now. And if you have a question about that now, please don't ask it. Something else we can discuss. Yes. I mean, if you can ask it if you want, and I'll say, sorry, tomorrow. Okay. I can hear you. Just go ahead.
Which is very important these days.
Innovation and creativity.
So does that kind of fall into Shri, or does it?
Well, that depends. What are you being creative about?
It could be anything. It could be making a customer presentation. It could be developing a new product. It could be how to present, how to get people to participate in Srimad Bhagavatam Bhadra Purnima. I mean, anything in that sense.
Problem solving. What prosperity type do you think problem solving is? Kian?
Okay.
Is that right? Okay. I want to go on? Okay, and then after this I need to go on to the next one. Yes. Well, most people like to get paid nicely. I think that's just general. Most people like to get paid nicely. First of all, most of us like to be able to buy things where we're comfortable in life. And I mean, that's just normal. Well, if you want a lot of luxury, then that can be an aspect of Aishwarya. If you want to have a life where you have a lot of luxury, and see, that's another aspect. You can have positional leadership but not be interested in luxury. They not necessarily go together. But most, as I said in the very beginning, were you here in the beginning? Yeah. So we all need some money. I mean, I don't know how you could live without. I'm sure there's a way. I'm sure there's some people who live with absolutely no money. But most of us need some money. Also, getting paid in work in modern society can often be a symbolic way of being appreciated or a symbolic way of having status, and like that. But money in and of itself is literally worthless. I mean, it's literally worthless. Now, if you got paid in gold, that would be different, but anybody getting paid in gold? I don't think so. But it's just, I'm traveling with my grandson, and so we came to India, and he said, Grandma, I wanted to tell you that my uncle Kirtan gave me 2,000 rupees to bring to India. Can you guess where I'm going to go with this? Guess when he gave him the 2,000 rupees? Pre-2016. And I didn't even look at it. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. Then he goes out and tries to spend it. And he comes back and he said, they told me these are worthless. And I look at them and I'm like, oops. These were demonetized in 2016. So today, you know, he needed to buy some water, and I gave him some rupees, and he took out this other notes, and he said, what do I do with it? I said, oh, whatever you want. He said, it's just paper, isn't it? I'm like, yep. So modern money in itself it's worthless. I mean, Prabhupada talks about being a miser. If you just look at the numbers in my account. You know, what does that give you? It gives you a sense of security. What do people want money for? Security. They even call it that, don't they? Securities. Isn't that funny? I always think that's funny. Buy security. Good luck with that. So money gives us security, gives us freedom. When I started this life by the big push of Krishna years ago, I said, my dear Lord, can you always make sure I have at least $2,000 so I can always get on an airplane from anywhere to anywhere? So if I don't like where I am, I can just leave. And that's another prosperity type we're about to come up to. You know, so it can give you freedom, it can give you pleasures, obviously it gives you status, right? It can give you comforts. But if you had all of those things without money, would you care about money? Let's say you had full security and you had full pleasures and you had full freedom and you had full status without having money. Would you care about money? No. So in and of itself, it's not a prosperity type. Does that make sense? Okay. And we'll actually get there in a moment. All right, I want to go on to the next one, which is yasha. And I was thinking about your point about bravery. If you're brave but nobody notices it, that might be virya. If you're brave and you're really into people noticing it, then you've got to bring in some yasha as well. Okay. So yasha in the Bhagavatam is the child of kirti and dharma. Kirti means to talk about, like kirtan. Dharma means what's authentic, what's righteous. So when people are talking about you because you've done something worthy, they're not just talking about you. Now, what became very clear to Rukmini and I is that to really have yasha as part of your work implies that you have a community. So there are many people who really prosper in work if they're part of a team or they're part of a group. It didn't go out. How did that happen? Is it going to go out? No. Wow. That's impressive. I've noticed that. I've noticed here when you want hot water in your shower, you just turn on the hot water knob. Never seen that before in India anywhere. Anyway, that's impressive. That's really impressive. Yeah, when I was just in Pune, when I was giving these presentations 3 or 4 times every session, okay, we're all sitting in a dark room with nothing on the screen. So yasha involves some sort of community. I remember working with this one devotee that if I said, Okay, so can you go and get this done and let us know? And yes, yes, yes. And nothing would happen at all. But if you worked as part of a team, everything happened. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And when I was presenting this in Spain, one devotee came up to me and said, I realize how much I really need yasha in my work. Some of us really want to be part of a group. I had one devotee tell me this, as the lockdown was finally easing up, and he had been working remotely. And he said, I can't wait to get back and work with my team. He said, I like to be able to work remotely, but I want to be with the team. I like the back and forth. I like how we're working with each other and having that acknowledgement and that the admiration, the encouragement of other people. Now this can be, people think often it can be, you're on stage and everyone's clapping for you, but that's really much more Shri. That's the charismatic leadership part of Shri. But yasha really involves a community. Not just that you're a musician on stage, but that you have a community of musicians or other people in your music business and you're supporting and encouraging each other. This is kind of, group social interaction. And in fact, part of my journey to look at career dharma started with one devotee who said to me, Urmila, my wife and I are very rich because we have such a loving, supportive community. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting way to define wealth. Now, by the way, this is something I really have a hard time liking. I don't like community social events. I don't like dealing with the emotional stuff. I absolutely despise any kind of event where people are at the front of the room getting praised I just can't stand that stuff. Like, I really don't like if I'm in the front of the room with a group of people and everyone's saying how wonderful we are. I'm just like, can you please be quiet and let me go back to my room and get something practical done? I mean, the only reason I accept introductions is because I realize that an introduction builds faith in the audience, in the speaker. It has a very practical value. Why should I sit and listen to this person? Well, they know what they're talking about. Oh, okay. And so I'm like, okay. But they always make me feel somewhat uncomfortable. This is just not something that I like. Now, I like some parts of yasha. I was realizing how much I value my network of friends all over the world. I have a network of thousands of friends who are networked and networked and networked and networked and networked. And, and it goes both ways. People contact me every single day. Urmila, do you know of somebody who can help with this? Do you know of someone who can help with this? Who can help with this? Where can I get this information? Where's this verse? Where's this reference? Where's this? Where's this? And I'm constantly networking information and people like that. And then I will also ask my network, hey, can you help me with this over here? So in that sense, I really like community, and I really like that community is part of my work. But I really don't like the group social interaction that's part of my work. Drives me bananas. The first time I said this when I was teaching Career Dharma, I felt very ashamed. And I felt like, wow, the devotees are going to judge me that I don't like sadhu sangha or something. But I do, but little groups. Like if I go to a holy place, I want to go alone or with 3 people, and we just sit and we read a pastime quietly, and we sit and we meditate. And you guys who go on this 10,000 people yatra, I'm like, oh my God, I want to run fast, far away from it as I possibly can. So, some of us really, this is part of our inspiration and part of our energy and part of our enlivenment in our work. And if we don't have it, it's very hard to do our work, and we feel very poor and impoverished. And for others of us, maybe there's some aspects, or maybe we could deal with it. And there's some of us who, again, really just don't like this. And really, it's something that we find disturbing if it's part of our work. So I'd like you to think, if possible, in your work, and if you haven't had it in your work, think of it in another part of your life, but if possible in a work-related situation, when you've had it, and thank you for bringing that to my attention, when you've had it and when you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you haven't had it? Okay, you doing okay with the translation there? It's good. Any questions or comments on Yasha? Yes, there.
Which we can say they, Yash, I mean to say Yash is basically people working in small communities.
It doesn't have to be small, but something where there is support and admiration in the community. And it can be a community of people in your same work that are supporting and helping each other.
But won't that would be leadership?
No, not at all. It's just you're working as part of a group. You're not working alone. And you're working as part of a group that gives each other admiration and support and encouragement.
So we would say more like a city, a village culture where they work in community?
We're talking about your specific work that you're doing. You could be in a village and you could be in your house weaving a rug by yourself.
Like in a setup in a city, if we are a city dweller, how do I identify myself that I have Yash?
Suppose you're in the city and you're working in an office and there are people, you're working as a group of 12 data analysts in the office, and the data analysts discuss things together as a team. They talk about what data they're going to collect, how they're analyzing it, they have discussions with each other, they share their findings with each other, they encourage each other. They're having a community in an office in a city.
Okay.
And you could be in a village and you're just weaving your rugs at home and someone else picks them up and takes them to the market for you, and you have a community in your after work social life. I think most of us have that, but we're talking about as part of your work.
As part of.
Okay, that could be city. I don't see that city country makes any difference there.
But Mataji, this Yash, it's a quality rather than it can fetch you money.
It's a type of prosperity that when you feel fulfilled.
Okay.
Money in and of itself does nothing. Nothing. It gets you something that makes you feel fulfilled. If you can be fulfilled directly, in some cases we need in modern society, you have to pay money to get a house.
One more question adding to it. Normally all of us are living with each other in each other's support in some way or the other.
Yeah.
So
of course, we're not all living on
society,
desert islands.
Yeah, effectively we all are supporting and encouraging
Yes,
each
that's
other.
true. But like when I'm working on stuff, I work best alone. Like if I'm researching something, I want to work alone. I don't want you to bother me. Now I do some work like this book I did with Rukmini. And we had kind of a mix of that. Like we stayed together for a month at New Vrindavan. It was just her and me. It wasn't like a whole group. And I think it was the first project that ever done that closely with a partner. So like we were staying in the same cabin, but it had 3 bedrooms, and she had one and I had one, and we would, work. The way we started was we sit down together, we outline the book, And then I said, okay, I'll write these chapters, you write these chapters. And then we went and did that. And then several times a day we would come together and what about this, what about this, what about this? And then finally I edited all of her work and she edited all of my work. Then she went through and edited everything. Then I went through and edited everything. Then we gave it out to other devotees who went through it and gave us comments. And then we went through it together. And then we sent it to professional editors, which went through, I think it went through 3 edits, and then we would discuss it together. But we would, to get this finished, we met once in New Vrindavan, once in Denver, once in Hawaii, and finally we were working over Zoom. And we would schedule an hour or 2-hour sessions. Sometimes all we said to each other was, Haribo Dandavat Pranams. And we would just, the whole time, just work on our own, but it was a scheduled time to get our work done. But I generally work best by myself, with occasional dealings with groups and other people. And again, I find most group social interaction to be something that I'm trying to get out of as quickly as possible. And I see that other people are exactly the reverse. I see that other people, that if you say, please go in your office and get this done, nothing will happen. At all. Like, at all. At all. Or very, very slowly. And you, why haven't you gotten anything done? You've had the last 4 hours. I don't know. And if they're working with somebody else, they're working with a group, then all of a sudden they're very productive and they're very enlivened. So there are many, many people that thrive on that. If they go to work and there's not a group that's enlivening each other and enthusing each other, then no matter how much money they're taking home at the end of the day, they feel poor, they feel impoverished. All right. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, any other questions specifically on Yasha?
Again here, Mataji.
Are you going to bring up exactly the same point?
Not same, but similar. Yash typically means success. As we use the word
These
in
are
the,
all,
in the regular,
these are 6 varieties of success.
So sense of achievement. Yash typically.
Prabhu, all of these are a different sense of achievement.
But the correlation of yash with sense of being part of community in my mind is
Fame. Like Prabhupada always translated it as fame.
Fame, okay. So for fame you need community setting.
It doesn't make any sense without it.
Yeah.
If you're going to be famous, you got to be famous to somebody.
Your fame spreads within community. That's why community is needed. Not
Without
necessarily-
community, yash makes no sense. You can't have it.
But there is a difference in community being there to support you and community being as a medium for having your fame spread in it.
If it's just, then I said, I think that's more Shri. If you have people who are just, wow, wow, that's Shri. That's the charismatic leadership of Shri.
Then what is yash then in contrast to Shri?
Where you have some group you're working with who's giving you regular admiration and support and encouragement and appreciation.
Admiration and appreciation.
Admiration, appreciation, support, encouragement. I mean, it may involve some correction as well, but you have some supportive, appreciative group that's part of your work, that your work involves that. Is that clear?
The broader base, basically these are the indicators where we find that this work makes me fulfilled.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Is that clearer? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, now the last one, it seems to many people as an anti-prosperity. This is vairagya, but it is one of the types of prosperity. Vairagya deals with freedom and detachment. So let's say you have a job where you can set your own hours. or you can travel a lot, or you don't have to deal with people's emotional interactions. You can have a lot of detachment in your work, or where you can live a very simplistic, minimalistic lifestyle. So again, for many people, if they don't have this in their work, they feel poor, they feel unfulfilled. They need, to feel prosperous, they need a job that fills them with detachment and freedom. And other people really don't like this. There are people for whom security is much more important. Okay. So again, I'd like you to think of when you had this, preferably in a work environment, but if not, in any other situation. When you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, any questions or discussions on Vairagya? Yes?
Trying to understand, not that I really could understand. I just have a question on that. Is that you do your seva or you do your job very enthusiastically, but it doesn't make any difference, or it doesn't hurt you, disturb you, when that job or seva is taken away? Is that called a detachment?
I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
Okay, that's why I'm getting confused here.
Yeah, we're talking about the nature of the job itself.
Okay.
Does it involve emotional detachment? Does it involve a lot of freedom of travel? Does it involve a lot of freedom of schedule? Does it involve a lot of freedom in terms of not having to have many possessions? Some sort of detachment in that respect. Yes? Well, to people who thrive on Vairagya, they don't need that. But they're very self-regulating people. And if somebody tries to regulate them, they go nuts. Other people thrive on accountability. I mean, all of us need some accountability, and all of us need some freedom, but some of us want this much freedom and this much accountability, and we're self-regulating. And it's annoying when someone else tries to regulate us, drives us bananas. And for other people, they really want a lot of accountability, and they want a lot of support, and they want a lot of security. And if you try to give them a tremendous amount of freedom, they don't like it. And they're just like, I'm very uncomfortable with this. Yeah? All right? When you're talking about being promoted, are we looking at why do you want to be promoted? Status, more money, or a better situation in terms of getting the prosperity types that you want? There was, when I was quite young, there was this book called The Peter Principle, that everybody keeps getting promoted until they get to the level of incompetence. So being promoted for the sake of being promoted isn't actually satisfying. We do have a desire to grow in mastery of our craft, but that may or may not involve a promotion. In fact, the promotion may put us out of our ideal work situation. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it depends. Do people want a promotion for the recognition and the encouragement? Well, then they probably just need more yasha in their work. Do they want it because they want more money? But usually that's because they want more money, because money is a symbol of appreciation. Do they want more money because they're genuinely struggling to live? Now that's another kind of problem. Okay, I want to bring up the very important point that you can't just exchange one type of prosperity for another. And what many people say to me, and every time they say to me, it breaks my heart, is, well, I'll work for money and then I'll get these things fulfilled elsewhere. And a lot of people try to make money at work and use the money to buy the types of things that enrich them. The problem is a huge amount of our day is taken up in earning a living. And if you're not getting fulfilled, what a sad life. If for the majority of my day I'm not feeling fulfilled by the work itself, that's not a way to live. Also, how much time do you have on the weekends and the evenings to try to get the types of prosperity that actually enrich you and that actually nourishes you? You know, you have an Ayurvedic department here, and I studied Ayurveda for a year, and one of the things that really struck me was the concept that not everybody has the same healthy diet. It was just like, wow. You know, in modern Western medicine, everybody should eat this. I mean, with some exceptions for allergies or certain diseases, but in general, and Ayurveda is not, well, what's your body type determines a different type of diet. We're nourished by different things, and this is true psychologically as well as physically. What happens when you try to exchange one type of currency for another? You always what? You always lose. So if you think, well, I'm getting, you know, such and such prosperity type at work, and I'll exchange it for another type, or I'll exchange money for another type, you know, it may not work. So again, this is all 6 of them. Now, right here we have a very stylized representation of the inner part of the Gaudiya Math logo that was designed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself. And Srila Prabhupada has this logo on our gates in Mayapur. So this is a very stylized version of it. So what I need to end now. Those of you who have the time and the interest and who have the book, so this particular topic is in part 1, chapter 2, What is My Nature? 6 Kinds of Wealth. So in these sessions, I cannot go as deeply as we go in the book. So if you're interested and you want to read that tonight. Also what we have, and I didn't have time to do this in the class, but you could certainly do it on your own. So we have exercises on the richness and the fields. So Appendix A has exercises on richness and fields. If you look in the table of contents, page X1, it's on page 499 in the book. And then I would only want you to do the exercises on the richness, not on the fields. We'll be studying the fields tomorrow. So there's an exercise in the back of the book on that, and there are also answers with explanation. So that's in the appendix. So if you want to, I know it's already 5:30, and you may want to go to, there's something exciting happening here at 6, right? There's something exciting happening here all day. It's incredible. I'm just floored. Anyway, so if you wanted to, if you don't want to run around to all the exciting things, and you want to do this tonight or maybe tomorrow morning to go more deeply into what we discussed today, so that's chapter 2, and then appendix A, and yes, then appendix C gives you the answers. All right, what we will be discussing tomorrow is we're going to go on to a different way of understanding our nature. It's related, but it's a different way, and is something with which you're all much more familiar. That will be the 4 fields of work. So in the morning class, we'll be discussing the definition of the four fields. You can think of it like the containers. In the evening, same time, afternoon, we'll be discussing the nature of the people within the four fields, and we'll be there getting into principle. 2, how do we identify our own nature within the four fields? And we will look briefly there on an individual level as what happens if we're in the wrong field. Monday morning, we're going to do what Urmila and I consider the most whoa part of this study. What happens in society when people work in the wrong field? When people do someone else's work, what happens in society? That will be Monday morning. And that particular analysis not only makes very clear why Krishna has developed this system of four fields, but it also makes very clear a lot of what's going on wrong with the world, why we're having the problems that we have. And then Monday in the evening, we'll be doing an overview of the entire book. So we'll be going rather quickly through the 4 in-depth classes we've had as a review, and then we'll be spending more time, although because it's an overview of the whole book, it will not be as in-depth as this, but we'll be spending more time with the other parts. So I hope that you liked this. I hope that you found it enlivening. If you still have a lot of questions, that's good. Hopefully we'll address many of them as we keep going. So anything that's good here and valuable comes from Srila Prabhupada, our Acharyas, the Supreme Lord, and the Shastra. Any mistakes here are mine. They don't even belong to my co-author. They're mine alone. So please take the good, and if you can just put aside the bad. And I want to thank all of you for all of you who are not from my own culture, or I don't know if I even have a culture. I don't know. Do Americans have a culture? I'm not quite sure. So I want you to thank you for tolerating my lack of culture. Somehow or other, Srila Prabhupada's accepted me despite that, and I hope I haven't offended any of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.